Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Milan podcast. Martino Puccio and Matt Santangelo alongside you guys. Before we get into the topic of the day, which you can see right here, we just like to ask you guys to subscribe, follow us here at That Milan podcast, as well as every other social media platform possible. Santangelo, first day of July, meaning the Mercato is open in Italy. So how are you doing? Are you excited for this summer? Probably not, right? I think most have tempered expectations.
Yeah, you can hear the alarm going off in the
You're
back there with the food I'm making. Yeah, no, honestly, it's July 1st feels like that kind of like that. All right, let's see things materialize on the market, right? We know Modric's coming in. We know Ricci's going to be done this week. Medicals are going to be taking place over the next day or so.
I
So
think July 3rd, yeah.
we should start to see a lot of these talks and negotiations come to more concrete terms, and we should hopefully see some more players come in. Obviously, we've seen the exodus of a lot of the loanees and players that Milan aren't taking on full term, but also the players coming back like Pobega and several others. So we're going to see a lot more movement on the market, things becoming more formal and finalized. And, I think with that, we'll have an understanding of what the rest of the market holds for Milan.
Yeah, a lot of players leaving on their loan deals that expired yesterday on June 30th, as well as the players returning. Adley, Noah Okafor, a couple of others that we know had returned. Again, really not surprised by any of these. One would have thought maybe Fiorentina would have triggered Adley, but it seemed like that second half of the season.
New coach, too.
Things just... Who is this, Pioli?
I think it's Pioli going back, right? I
don't even know if it's official. That's what this carousel is insane. Milan itself are just such a cluster hell of news that I haven't really been paying attention too much. So again, for me, not really surprising with those sorts of players. Milan are going to have, Tade specifically is going to have a lot on his hands in order handling exodus of some of those players, as well as some of the players that were within the squad itself that still need to be sold and taken care of. So we'll see how that happens. And you mentioned the Ricci and Modric incoming news. This one, Arden Jashari. We kind of waited a little bit with this. We wanted a few more days for it to materialize. It looks like it is improving vastly. Here's the breakdown with it, right? So essentially, Jashari only wants Milan. That's been confirmed by multiple reports: Fabrizio Romano, Matteo Moretto, reports in Italy, reports out of Belgium. We all know what it is. But very much like the CDK situation. And again, guys, I urge you to realize not every player is the same, especially if you buy them from the same team. So calm down. Take a breath. Okay. Now that you did that, 30 million plus is what it's going to take. We're hearing and reading figures around 35 million to 40 million, depending on bonuses, probably something in terms of a resale value as well. We don't know what the percentages are regarding that. They look like they want this guy. And the other parts of it that are important for people to remember is that this would be the last midfield addition if purchased. They aren't going for Xhaka and Jashari because they got Ricci over the line. Ricci, Modric, and Jashari would be the three midfielders in, with the other midfielders that we had mentioned, Adley, Pobega out, likely Yunus Musa as well. RLC and Bondo likely to stay to go along with Yusuf Fofana. We'll get into the whole midfield landscape in a second. But this deal, listen, I got a picture here for you that we all kind of knew about. So here's your evidence of a young Jashari at Milan, Barcelona. Look at him. He's a baby. He's a baby. This was his first ever Serie A and Milan match.
Also a match coached by Allegri, too.
Yes, Max. Allegri coached that one. And if people remember, I think if it's the 2011 one, I believe we beat them. This must have been the Boateng goal game where he had one of the greatest Milan Champions League goals, especially in the group stage.
Is that the Sulimentari scored in that one, too?
No, that was the next year, 2012.
That's right. Okay.
And then 2013 was Niang, but sure.
God, we had some crazy luck playing Barcelona that many times.
We played Barcelona very well those days. Allegri does not get credit for fielding those. We would have eliminated Barcelona if Niang finishes that chance with the away goals. But that's in the past. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the current day. So Jashari, as some may not know, was the Belgian Super League Pro Player of the Year, the Pro League Player of the Year, excuse me. He was the Player of the Year in his first season. He's just 22 years of age.
And
We
I
know
think
he's
Young
not.
Player of the Year too, right? I think he won both.
Sorry, say that again.
I think he won like Player of the Year, but I also think he won. Was it like a Young Player of the Year award? I'm pretty sure he won.
Yeah,
two
yeah.
awards.
Well, he's the young player of the year too, because if you're player
Right.
of the year and he's U23,
Yeah.
so that also like
Yeah.
happened. He's turning 23 in July 30th, so he's 22 the whole time. So again, this is also someone who's been capped at the international level with the Swiss. I understand the risk. There's no doubt about it. He's only played one league year in a relatively high league with Club Brugge. Did very well in the Champions League. I understand the risk. I understand everybody's, hesitation with doing this move because of the figure. I would say, guys, truthfully, with this figure stuff, get over it. Because eventually they're going to have to spend money. Eventually they're going to have to take risks. There's tons of clubs out there, Matt, and you know this, that pay more for other players. That's also deemed a risk. Milan are going to have to eventually do this. And 35 million, I'm sorry, everyone's thinking about like 5 years ago. That's half a decade.
Yeah.
Half a decade has gone by, guys. It's 2025. Milan and their fiscal champions should be in position to make a move like this. I understand the risk involved. I don't know too much on the player. I'm not an expert. I've only seen Champions League play from him. But everyone I talk to that watches the Belgian League and Club Brugge, they love him. They also think, obviously, he has room to grow. And the one comparison that you consistently hear, Matt, and it makes sense when you see him play, is a taller, stronger Benacer. So your initial thoughts on the links, the price, and just the entire deal here.
Yeah. So Milan's pursuit of Arden Jashari will give fans that initial doubt because they obviously have that sort of PTSD that still lingers from the failed transfer of Charles de Ketelaere, who we had so much high hope for. We worked tirelessly that market to bring him in as the kind of the key piece, right, in the attack as a creative player and really off the back of the Scudetto to help us push forward and continue to compete for more. So I understand that sort of pause to spend this much money, which reportedly looks to be, in that near that 40 million range. But I think the fact that he does play in a midfield and he does, again, have a lot of the qualities that we are looking for in that sort of region of the pitch, it does give me a little bit more calm because I do think that he has a profile we're looking for. He's not going to be asked to come in here and, okay, we need goals, we need creativity, we need all these sorts of things. I think he can kind of slide into this team with Modric around him, with Ricci, who has experience in Serie A, and a lot of the other experienced players in this midfield, and sort of we can kind of coddle him a little bit. He's not going to have the big Champions League, platforms that he has to immediately compete under. Although we saw last year at Club Brugge, he did really well in that respect. So overall, again, I'm not having so much concern over the fee. Again, Milan need to go and show that ambition and say, hey, if we really like this guy, if we really back what we did with regards to our scouting and recruitment, then we have to kind of sort of get with the times and spend up on a player. Because you and I know, and we discussed this last episode and episodes prior, if they're not going to go after the 20 to 30 million player now, that player's priced out next year. They're not going to be able to get him at that point. So I think that if you really truly like the player, he fits the billing, he crosses off all the boxes you're looking for, you get him now. And worst case scenario, I'm going to give the fans the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, it's another Club Brugge flop. He's 23. You can still flip him, and some team will say, maybe it's just a byproduct of a failed Milan, and we'll take him on, and we'll see if we can develop him. Yeah. Because proof is in the pudding. De Ketelaere, so much pressure, failed to succeed at Milan, was immediately dumped to Atalanta. Good coach, young group, young foundation, and
higher expectation.
So that's how I feel about Jashari. Again, I want to make this very clear. I'm not going to come onto this podcast and say, I watched him extensively last year. I did catch glimpses of him in the Champions League, which obviously it's a little more available for us here in the States to watch those games. And I do like what I see, and I can understand the links and comparisons to a Benacer. We obviously hope that the health is on his side, which it seems to be the case. He's much younger. He doesn't have that sort of injury record when it comes to his legs and knees and all those sorts of things. So I think that's what Milan fans have to look for. And by all accounts, from what I've read from people who have watched him, he seems like the real deal. And if Milan are able to get him in now at this age, when he has the desire to join a club like Milan, is holding out for a club like Milan, despite not being in the Champions League, I think you do it now and you do it early because you want to do this now. I understand Milan's going back and forth over fee again, 30, 32 plus bonuses, all these sorts of things. Get the player in, get him in soon, and have him start to kind of understand what it means to put on the shirt that he's been yearning to throw on his back.
Yeah, I think the risk is always there regardless. And I always find it funny when we look at Rafael Leao and his purchase in the year that it happened in 2019. It was not cheap, Matt. You remember. That was 30 million euro for a player that a lot of people had skepticism of in Ligue 1. He was profiled as a second striker. He was also, out of that Sporting situation, which was a little bizarre of his to be a part of, even though we know it wasn't his fault. And then the CDK situation too. I like your comparison of it and bringing that up. And one thing that I like to just tack on with that is the pressure. There is far less pressure for Jashari to actually perform than it was for CDK. Milan are coming off of a Champions League. a Scudetto win, getting into the Champions League a second straight year. And CDK, as a whole, Matt, was the entire market. He was essentially everything. Yeah. Everything that they talked about, negotiations, back and forth. Are Milan able to get this blue chip talent that is one of the better young forwards within all of Europe, especially in the U23 level? Are they able to get him in, pair him with Leao and what they had up there and build on top of that project? And it was such a massive flop for them that I think so many people are scarred by that now, just like they used to be scarred by certain Atalanta players, right? Because they saw Andrea Conte get hurt and Caldara get hurt. But meanwhile, there's also Frank Kessie,
it proved to be very durable.
Yeah, and I just find it funny how people go there. No same deal is exact, right? So for me, I think Tade, for this summer, at the very least, deserves the benefit of the doubt when taking a risk on a player. And it's funny to me that people want to take a risk on something that they'd rather spend more money on somebody that they know. Just because you know somebody and a player doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be great, just like they're going to be bad if you don't know them. I just think people are panicking a little bit too much because of the trust issues that they have over the past 15 years, right? It's year 1 for Tade. It's year 15 for Milan fans, or probably even further back if you really want to be serious about it, of this ineptitude, this hit or miss, all or nothing transfer markets that are either really good or they're really bad, nothing in between usually. So I understand where fans are coming from. The talent is there. The upside is there. He's performed at the highest of levels. He plays for a very good Swiss international team. Everything you hear about him is positive. And again, you don't know until they step on the field, Matt. It's quite simple. You do not know. Because CDK, I loved him. I had watched him extensively. I thought he was going to be great. And we see him get to Milan. How timid was he all the time? Looked like he was scared to press and go into certain situations, and it really got to him. Jashari, it could be different. And I hope it works out for him. I'm totally fine with the price because guess what? Like you said, I say,
that's also what I want to figure out too. And those who are watching and listening to our podcast and with familiarity on Jashari, get in the comments. Let us know mentality-wise. Is this a player that you think can withstand the pressures of playing for Milan, right? It's one thing to say, hey, I was at San Siro more than a decade ago. I want to play for Milan. I've always had dreams of playing for this club. But it's another to be able to wear that burden and carry that burden of, okay, now, hey, we're spending quite a big amount of money on you to come join this club. We're expecting you to hit the ground running. There will be a little bit of that coddling initially because, again, Milan are not playing high leverage games very early on in the season. They're not getting those big Champions League games away or hosting at San Siro where you're playing a big opponent and you're going to put Jashari in there and say, hey, we need you to run this game. But there is going to be that immediate expectation to deliver because Milan can't afford to have a second failed transfer for a young player with Club Brugge for a big fee. So if you're familiar with Jashari, get in the comments. Let us know, is this a player that has it mentally? Do you think he can withstand the pressure to play for this club? I'm curious to see some of the thoughts from those who frequently watch the Belgian league and know more about the player.
Tons of Albanians will be letting us know. Obviously, Jashari, ethnically Albanian, Swiss. So tons of Milan Albanian fans out there. So shout out to you guys. Let us know. So Milan's revamped midfield, essentially. I think this deal is going to get over the line. I'll be quite honest with you guys. Price, irregardless, I think it's going to come down to details of bonuses and percentage of resale is ultimately what's going to take a little bit longer with this, but I do fully expect this to be done. And so with that, I will say Milan has a revamped midfield, Matt. I think it's fairly obvious. Yassine Adli, Pobega. We obviously see Reinders out the door as well. And Musa and Benacer are the other likely departures in that area. There have been links for Warren Bondo to leave on loan to some Premier League clubs. I think it was Brentford and Bournemouth, but Milan are not going to be interested in. Huh?
I think it was it Burnley? I thought I saw Burnley.
Is it Burnley? It was another club with a B, so it could be Burnley. Yeah. Burnley's newly promoted as well. So either way, clubs are interested in a loan deal. Doesn't make sense for Milan. Didn't really get an opportunity at Milan. Injuries and then Conceição's stubbornness on top of it, trying to save his job. I get it. It was a weird situation for him to get into. So realistically, Matt, it's going to be Modric, Fofana, RLC, Ricci, Jashari, and then Bondo. For me, that's more than enough for once a week in the league. I think it's more than enough talent. Though arguably the worst player you're looking at there, Matt, is Bondo. And Bondo is a serviceable Serie A player already. Has been proven that he could play even in the worst of sides. I think he might do very well in Allegri's system, which is likely to be a 4-3-3 for everybody who is curious, which is why I think RLC will actually have a much better season than last year. Can only go up.
Provided he's healthy.
And yeah, whatever. That's provided with anybody at this point. But yeah, I think you're right. My question is, just real quick, and I know this is maybe drifting away a little bit. What is the starting three against Cremonese? Because it could be Modric, Fofana, Jashari. It could be Modric, Fofana, and Ricci. Who's the one who's going to be sitting a good amount? Because once a week, we could see Allegri trusting Luka Modric more often than certain players here. And to earn the trust of a manager of Allegri, it takes a lot. So I'm kind of curious to see how that happens. We could see when these deals get over the line. Modric is currently playing against Juve, so he's not supposed to be returning to Milan until mid to late July. So he might not even be fully ready for that match against Cremonese. Who do you think really is the bulk of that starting three? I personally believe RLC off the bench could be a weapon, provided healthy and in a box-to-box formation. I don't subscribe to RLC being that awful if he's your fourth or fifth choice. I think fourth or fifth choice in Serie A once a week in a three-man midfield, he's a respectable player. Badir and everyone else hating him be damned. I understand it, but this isn't that bad of a player. I think people need to dial it back just a bit. He's going to be capable enough. He's also got great dance moves on TikTok. I know you're not on there. Him and his sister have been dancing a bunch. They've been very entertaining. And I like Ruben. I think he's a professional, man. He's not a number 6. It's not his fault. For me. So what are you kind of thinking of? Do you like this revamped midfield? Would you remove any one of the names that are allegedly staying? So yeah, I think as a whole, I like it, especially once a week. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's by all accounts like your entire starting midfield could look changed, right, from what we saw last year. Fofana, I'd say is a starter. And I think there's a good chance that he does start match day 1 because, again, familiarity with the league. He's maybe Allegri's watched him a little bit more. He has an understanding of the player and what he was able to do year 1, and maybe there's certain things he could work on. But I think when you look at the personnel, I think there's plenty of quality here. I mean, I think that we saw from Fofana last year was a player that was played out of position. We didn't see the best of him, in my opinion. This was a player this time last year, we were linked with him, and he was very sought after. So I expect a good bounce back year from Fofana. more organized midfield work from him with the personnel we have around him. I feel like the midfield should be much better. And obviously that's going to be up to Allegri to get all these new pieces to kind of coexist and to kind of settle in quickly, because Milan do have, I believe, a Coppa Italia game against Bari before the Cremonese game. So I think that's on the 17th. I got the schedule up here. Yeah, that's on the 17th. That is a Saturday, and then the following weekend is against Cremonese, as you mentioned. That's at home. So does he? I would assume Modric's like sure thing, unless he's absolutely.
Well, the reports are today that we're coming out about when he's arriving, because he's still
late July, yeah,
probably late July. He's going to cut his vacation short. It's just how deep do they go? Do you want to risk him
in a game like that? I think you start him. Again,
which one?
Cremonese. That's a game. Okay. That's a game you start him. He plays 60 minutes. You hope you're controlling the game. You take him off. That type of thing. Because Milan,
I think he's probably going to be a sub. But go ahead, you're good.
So I think the beauty about it is I feel like with this team, I think there should be more balance, and maybe where they're lacking with that offensive edge, right? As I mentioned in our previous episode, Tijani Reinders, he did so brilliantly.
Top scorer in the league for us, by the way.
He did really well with that aspect of his game. I know defensively he wasn't up to that level, but so for the City fans that are expecting him to be a defensive stalwart, newsflash, he's not going to be that type of player. But he's a fine player. I'm not trying to slander T. Jones. So yeah, I think in that sense, Milan should have a much more balanced approach and much more balanced personnel in the midfield. Again, the caveat or the question mark being, okay, well, where are they going to have some sort of production from that midfield? Is it Fofana? Is Fofana the player that's getting back to a more familiar role? And with that, is he more box to box? I'm not saying he's going to be a great finisher, but is this a player that strong on the ball, good ball carry going forward? Does he get into those advanced positions? Do we see maybe an influx of contribution from him in the final third? So I'm pretty pleased with the midfield. If this is the final group, there are some young players here, as we mentioned with Ricci, Jashari potentially coming in.
Bondo's very young.
We didn't get a chance to see much of Bondo last year. He came in, he was banged up, injured, so we got brief cameos from him. But by all accounts, this is a player that is of that defensive-minded mold. So I think there's a lot to like with this Milan midfield.
Yeah, Bondo's only 21, man. He's
young. He's a young.
He's very young, and he has some experience already.
And on Bondo, there's like a video or like a clip going around about I think it was what Luca Bianchi of Gazzetta dello Sport actually met him previous summer. He was in the States. He was in the States for the US tour. So
we'll mention him in a moment.
There was a clip or a quote from him saying, does Bondo go on loan or whatever? And he says like there's someone close to Allegri at the club that basically is encouraging him and saying like, keep this player. He's a good player. I don't let's make of it who you will. I don't know who it is, but
he meant that like he was talking to the other like people on the panel. This is just to clarify for people like asking. So Bianchi was just basically in the clip and he was just saying he knows somebody close to Allegri that the other people on the panel would know, but he's not going to state it publicly because you don't reveal your sources, blah, blah, blah. And he was just saying he likes him. So that's why he's not going to go on loan. And also the loan deal really makes no sense for me, like at all. It just doesn't. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I think that's probably the most exciting thing. And guess what, Matt? We're talking about a revamped midfield done first week of July. How about that? Clap it up for competency. All right. Moving on to the striker position. This is fascinating. We have confirmation Tammy Abraham, Luka Jovic, they're out. We also have confirmation that Francesco Camarda is going on loan to Lecce. So to develop further away from the club as they play once a week this season, I'm okay with the move. We've already discussed this. Check out our last videos on that. However, there's a lot to go on here. I may have or may have not put on a tinfoil hat to put on not a conspiracy theory, but to connect dots as to going off of reports and interviews, right? Reports can always be vague. They could be spotty. They could have some information that's good, some information that's bad. And then we go off of interviews from directors, aka Tade, which could be vague and they could be transparent, but that's up for you to decide. I will say this, and I'll put it in this timeline. So Luca, as you just mentioned, our very fine reporter who is relatively reliable, ends up saying that there are Milan rumors saying that they are going to spend on a striker. And there was two things within the report. One, The main thing was, and it was very surprising coming from a reliable reporter like him, is that Milan's highest paid transfer to come this summer would be the striker position. And as we had just talked about with Jashari, that's already going to exceed around 35 million euro. And if you go off of what Luca is saying and you trust what Luca is saying, then Milan's purchase of a striker, Matt, would be at least 40 million. And now I'm going to continue before I let you go in here. There was a link and a mention of Retegui. And Retegui, to Luca's credit, to what he said was he would be a pipe dream. He is a dream for Milan. That would have to be some sort of crazy financial moves around to work it out, probably spread out over time. But that one's the unlikely one, right? But the ambition is there. So then Tade gives an interview, as we knew, with a newspaper, and Giorgio Forlani did as well, and it was the same night. And Tade's just talking about movements on the market. He was talking about how Luka Modric and his leadership is going to be a great addition to Milan, basically already confirming that. He then confirmed about interest to the striker position. Mm-hmm. And with that, he had mentioned he wants somebody like Giroud. And now I had mentioned this on the past podcast on links and what I think would make sense and what we've seen with players linked to Milan price-wise, go off of Luca's reports, and then stylistically off of what Tade is saying. There's a small window and group of players that fit into all that, right? Where you get that Venn diagram and circles are overlapping and, okay, most expensive signing would be 40 million euros. Who's worth 40 million and up? Who have Milan been linked to? And who plays like Giroud? Those are all three things that we're trying to decode here, right? If that were to be true. The question remains, who and when and for how much? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. The situation is very interesting because the reports are saying that, you know, they do want to get another striker, and it's obvious they need to get another striker. We know the names that have left, but you did just make those investments in January for Santiago Jimenez, upwards of 30 million. Mm-hmm. And there are reports of, you know, that Allegri wants to see him out in the summer and maybe make that sort of like decision later on before you make any rash decisions and say, okay, gotta get rid of this guy. So I'm kind of like reluctant to kind of be like, oh, well, you know, we're going to spend 40 plus 50 million on a striker because, you know, that's just kind of not in our nature. But mm-hmm. the fact that, you know, these reports and rumors won't go away. They seem to still fester. It's interesting. And I think that that's kind of one of those things that maybe is like a luxury signing towards like the middle to back end of the market. Maybe they want to see it out because a lot of the big high profile strikers still, we don't really know what their future holds, right? Goyerkes, that's a very like messy situation with Sporting. For those that are not privy to mm-hmm. what's going on there, it's the president involved. The player wants to leave. There's cryptic messages on his IG.
And he's not that young. He's late 20s.
Late 20s. He was, I think, was at Coventry. Like he was in the Premier League or like.
Yeah, he was in the championship at one point.
Sporting exploded, and now it's like this outrageous figure that's, you know, floating around his name, Victor Osimhen, right? Jonathan David looks like he's going to Juventus as it seems, despite
recent reports,
the agent,
which also confirms Vlahovic on his way out.
Right. And Vlahovic, apparently, he's kind of playing like also that sort of firm position of, well, you know what? I don't want to leave. I'll stay here. He's making 12 million. Doesn't look like he wants to take a pay cut. It doesn't look like he wants to go to Saudi or go anywhere else. So maybe he's in a position where he just says, I'll wait it out next year, make my 12, and I'll go somewhere in the following summer, prove myself. Or maybe he moves in January. So I'm looking at the sort of striker market, and I think it's very fascinating that the fact that there aren't many names in that sort of 40 to 50 million, you know, bracket that would you kind of go to Milan and say, okay, now we're going to spend, you know, almost a record fee for a player. So I'm kind of like not jumping in head first on this. I'm still kind of like feeling more reserved because I see that they have a lot of other things to take care of right now. And I feel like that's the focus, is scaling down this team.
Sure.
The revamp in the midfield seems like it's already kind of in the mix and going to be complete soon. So let's wait and see, because I do think, again, we want to harp on this and consistently harp on this, Martino, and you mentioned it, you know, pretty much every time, is Milan have a lot of players that are going to be leaving.
Yes.
That are going to be able to fetch them maybe that little extra cash they need to go and go and get that additional high profile striker. So I think that those dominoes need to fall before Milan can kind of formalize a bid in the region, as you pointed out, upwards 40 million for a striker.
And you read my mind, because this is how long we've been doing podcasts. So you can like kind of get where I'm coming from, right? So 3 players that are going to be on their way out that Milan probably will get money for that are not officially confirmed yet. And so here are the 3. And there's stronger rumors with this second player. First player being Theo Hernandez. We'd likely know it's going to be upwards of 30 million for him, right? So you obviously have to go in for a left back. Firpo left, Leeds. I don't know how true that would be with the link with Milan. The Kuiper links are really rounding back into form again. He's rumored to be Brighton, but again, Brighton or Milan, you take your pick. I don't really care. You tell me. And then Musa links. I think the Musa links, very obviously, Milan have leverage in this. And it's very surprising, regardless of what you think of the player, Milan have leverage. He is a physical, young midfielder who, based off of, facts, has upside in theory, right? He's not proven, he's not done. Will we think he will reach that upside? No. That's also why he's leaving. But 25 million for him. Then you're suddenly looking at 55 million for Theo Hernandez and Yunus Musa, Matt, and then Samuel Chukwueze, who also could likely be on his way out. Noah Okafor. So say you get Okafor and Chukwueze out. They finally find a way to get money for both of them, say over at least 12 to 13 million for both players. You're looking at 26 million on top of that. 50 with them and Musa, and then Theo is 80. And then you're talking about the Rangers sale, which is at least 65 million, 145 million euro in transfers for players. Luca was on a free. Jashari was already signed. Bondo's already signed. These players that they're, and Richie, whatever, 25 million. That's still only a fraction. If they end up getting a De Kuiper, who's rumored at most 20 million, Milan still have mucho dinero to play with.
They got play money. Yeah.
They have money. Where do they put it? Is it go to, and by the way, we don't even know what the situation at the center back is going to be.
Yeah.
Does Chow end up leaving? Do they get 20, 25 million for him? And this is what I've said all calendar year long. And finally, people are realizing and opening their eyes. They have money to play with if they sold proper players, which they do. And by the way, we didn't even mention the Pierre Kalulu side of things. That money just came in as well. And I think there was a plus Valenza purely, right? Because I got him for like 500K. So I think it was close to 20 million with the bonuses, or 16.
I think it was 14 was the option, and then I think it was a 3 million loan. So it's, I don't know.
No, I think it was the loan, the 14, and then
there was bonuses. Yeah, so I think it's close to 20 million. Yeah,
which is still pretty good. Yeah. So I think adding all that up, yeah, you're right. It comes down to that. But I think the most important thing to note for a lot of people, and to your point, is fullback, center back are priority over striker right now. And to your great point with the Santiago Jimenez thing, Jimenez could be liked. He could stay here for a bit. And I also like to let people know, if we look at Inter, how many strikers and forwards do they have after signing Boni that are worth 25 million and more, Matt? 4 with Esposito, right? That's 4 guys. Milan have 1. And some people, I guess my point is the counter argument here, and I'm not sure what you think of it. What people are arguing is, why are you spending upwards of 30 million, or in this case, 40 million for a striker when you have Jimenez and Camarda? And my counter to every single one of you is, Camarda is not a guarantee, nor technically is Santi Jimenez. Why are you against adding talent, regardless of price, is my question. And I don't think you should. I don't think Milan should. Milan used to sit Pipo and Zaghi. Okay? He did not play every single week, start every single week. That's a legendary striker. I am just saying, if you guys want Milan to be a top team, competing like a top team, that also means really good players are going to be sitting on the bench sometimes. So calm down, relax. Yeah, I mean, you probably would assume it's third in the pecking order in terms of positional need, or like ask.
Well, let's look at this. Sure. Right? So midfield, you would assume is done. Now it feels like more or less it's on the exit side of things.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The attack, it looks to me it's going to be Pulisic and Alexis as your right wingers, right? Like Alexis, and he's going to be like more like your versatile guy off.
Yeah.
So It looks like you have that side sorted. The
Yeah.
left side, so Teal went back, so they're not keeping him. Okafor, he's out. They're trying to get rid of him as much as possible. And it's Rafael Leao. So I do think that they don't really have many more things in the attacking side that they need to address. That's what's going to be a little bit curious is on the left wing side is how do they get another player in there to help with Rafael Leao, right?
Lorenzo Insigne is free.
Or yeah, Bernardeschi just went to Bologna, right?
I'm joking about it.
I think from an attacking sense, I can see them going a couple different ways. I could see them going within Serie A, and there's going to be a name that floats around that they've liked that's maybe 15 million, and they go and they get that guy as a backup to Rafael Leao. Or alternatively, they maybe play around with some of the players within their squad. Maybe they observe Alexis as more of a player that can play on both sides, and they say, hey, you know what? We're playing one competition. We don't need the extra player. We don't need to go out there and spend extra money. They want to maybe put that in the striker area. But I think they're kind of observing and sitting back and letting things unfold. Because, as I just mentioned, I feel like this striker market, there's a lot of dominoes and connecting pieces, and I think a lot of things kind of have to let play out first before maybe Milan can kind of seize their opportunity. Because look at Napoli. Napoli want another striker. It was Darwin Nunez. Okay, too much money. Then it's Luca. Now Udinese apparently want 40 million according to Di Marzio from the 30 million, which I think was a fee that was presented to Milan, right? When there was talks of Milan being interested in January, right? Then there's also Moise Kean, who apparently Napoli are looking at too, because they're probably thinking, hey, why would we spend this money on
50 million?
Why would we spend this money on Darwin Nunez when we could get a guy like Moise Kean, who's proven in the league for about the same fee? So I think there's a lot of things that kind of have to fall in place on Milan's market and on the exit side for Milan to have an understanding of, okay, what are we playing with? How much do we have to go and get the striker that many reports are saying Milan are going to go for? So keep an eye out on this, guys. It's still July 1st. The fact that we're actually having the conversation that Milan are going to have 3 potential new midfielders sorted by the end of this week in July it's good work. And I also think it's pretty funny that you're seeing a lot of these things get done and getting done pretty quickly when we have a sporting director. Like, amazing how that works, right?
Yes, and to kind of just go off of what you're talking about, latest report is Milan have up their offer to a 38 million euro package in total.
35 and 3?
No, no, it's the base is 32.5 million. This is just now from Fabrizio Romano. So 32.5 million base price, bonuses up to 38 million. And again, it doesn't matter. And he reiterates this: Dortmund, all these other clubs do not matter to Jashari. He only wants Milan. So it's really up to Brugge right now.
Isn't it like frustrating too, watching this, right? And watching these quotes and watching all these. This is a club that
has
fallen on recent times. They're not in the Champions League. This player is in the Champions League, has interest from other clubs that are probably in the Champions League that have, with respect, good backgrounds. Dortmund's no slouch. They're a team that's regularly competing in the Champions League. They're a team that brings a great atmosphere, great stadium, great fan base, and great players. And yet the players still like, despite all that, I want Milan. Isn't it amazing that Milan still has?
I said it
where they should be.
I said it yesterday. I think you also replied to me.
Yeah, I said something sarcastic probably.
Yeah. But like I say it all the time. And that's why I don't give up on the club, because of this is the evidence. Is that all I need? Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, the striker situation is just still fascinating to me. Juve, Kolo Muani, and Jonathan David. How does that play out with Vlahovic? I think they're going to push Vlahovic out the door. I think Milan are going to have an opportunity for Vlahovic. I bet it would likely be around 5 to 6 million euro net per season that he's going to have to take a 50% cut. If he wants to come to Milan, he's going to have to take a 50% cut. And again, he has to prioritize and figure out what does he want in the long term. If he doesn't want Saudi, he doesn't want Turkey, those are your options, bro.
I can see him having a very similar path to what Osimhen did. Where like Napoli,
that's possible, but it's always, and you know this, it's always up to the player. Osimhen wanted more money. He's getting what he.
Well, think about this. I think Tammy Abraham got he's getting paid quite a bit at Besiktas. Yes. So if I'm Vlahovic, I mean, again, it all comes down to, all right, on his end, he's like, I'm getting paid 12 million. I'll take a pay cut, but 50% is crazy. right? In his mind.
Yeah, I know.
So
I floated the Vlahovic thing a while back,
does
and
he
I
sit in the
said
stands for 6 months and they move him in
he's
January
not
and see
sitting
if
in the
things get revisited?
stands. These
I
guys
don't
don't
know.
sit in the stands. This is the one that checks all the boxes. I'm sorry to break it to everybody. First of all, Ivan Juric, I don't think he's as bad as a manager as we saw this past year. I think he accepted 2 terrible jobs. He also did a terrible job at Roma and Southampton. Southampton was a sinking ship. That was just a stupid job to latch on to. I understand it's in the Premier League, but they were absolutely terrible. One of the worst teams ever in the top flight in the modern Prem. Roma was a disaster. But we've seen what he's capable of doing, Juric. He's done a pretty good job in Serie A. However, played nothing like Gasparini. Doesn't play offensive football. Doesn't play football that caters to someone like Retegui, in my opinion. And if you're Retegui, Gianluca Scamacca's coming back. What is the role that you will be playing within the squad this year? Are Atalanta going to be in the same position without having their greatest ever manager in Gasparini? If you're Retegui, Matt, heading into a World Cup year, you want to be in your best form. Do you think Milan come calling for Retegui? It again, with the Giroud comments, it makes a lot of sense. Some people apparently disagree with me and saying that he doesn't play like Giroud. I'm saying he's similar to Giroud in that they're dangerous threats inside the box, and that's where they feast. They don't feast outside of it. They don't run in behind defenses. Giroud, better at heading the ball, no doubt. Better at build-up play, was when he was younger. Retegui is not that. But as a pure goal scorer, and now, again, I also don't think it complements Santiago Jimenez exactly well. But there is one player that I love personally from Lyon that I would like Milan to get. And that's I'm not even going to attempt to say his name. But he's Kavara's scoring mate because I always mess it up. Mirazuke, or however you say it.
Oh, the Georgian.
Yeah, the Georgian striker, who isn't much of a pure 9. He would complement a Santi Jimenez if they were to play a 2-striker formation, is my point. But based off of Tare's comments, does Retegui not reflect everything that he's talking about? And then the prices with Luca? Because the rumored was the 40 million release clause. As you talk, I'll try and figure out what that release clause number is. I think he checks the boxes of what Tare was saying in the other reports.
It's interesting too because I think Atalanta, I mean, obviously when they changed their coach, right? Gasparini was there for
50 million.
He was almost a decade at Atalanta, right? So the fact that he's at Roma now, when they got Ivan Juric, and it seems like it's a changing of the sort of philosophy, at least in my opinion. I mean, there are different coaches in terms of play style. And with that, do you see different personnel? Do you see a different preference on how to play? They did sell Ruggeri to Atletico Madrid. So, like, you're seeing players leave. And I know Atalanta, that's kind of customary for them. They typically will sell players that have that value. They're young, and then they flip them, and they make money, whatever, and they find the next guy, right? They did just sign, apparently, Suleimana from Southampton, which was someone that Juric apparently really likes. And he is a young forward. So, Lookman could be on the way out. Is this...
Absolutely.
Do they go all in and say, okay, like, fine, we're going to cash in on Retegui, like, this is a young project, we're going to move on? I don't know, because we're talking about a player that scored the most goals in Serie A last year, and I'd like to think he would go for more than 40 million.
Well, the release clause is 50, by the way. So
50, right? So even then, like, could he go for more than 50 million in this market?
No. I think someone would, if they're interested in Retegui and they're interested,
they would have.
I'm
assuming there's Martino. There's something similar to what happens with Moise Kean, right? Where if you're going to trigger it, it has to be done in the first 2 weeks of July.
That's his. I'll try and find for Retegui, but I'm not seeing that.
Because naturally, why would Atalanta want to be in a position where, let's say, they get squeezed out, and now it's mid-July, and now they'd have to figure out what their solution is up front.
Well, they have Gianluca Scamacca.
But he's coming back from an injury too.
Like, he's already been back. He's fine. He's just got to play. He came back last year. He just wasn't, like, fully fit. He's going to be fully fit for this year.
I'm just saying, when I say come back, I mean come back and producing.
Well,
he was playing well.
I understand, but this is also a club that saw Scamacca go down, and what did they do? They swiftly moved for Retegui. If they have money, they're going to make swift moves. I get you, but I also, like, think to the point of, like, how do players respond to Gasparini leaving? I know he wasn't necessarily popular in terms of, being buddy with the guys, because he's a little bit more of a dictator, if you will, of a manager, because it's he was Atalanta. right? Well, truthfully, we'll see for sure, right? The
Yeah.
Belichick-Brady situation, even though it's not like 1-on-1, we're going to see how much of Atalanta was really Gasparini. And I'm willing to say it was at least 85% because they've had directors move.
How much of that sort of Atalanta's success was a
Player
byproduct of
development.
Gasparini, or was it based on the ecosystem that Atalanta? Because Atalanta does have a very good scouting network. They have one of the better ones, and not just Italy and Europe. When it comes to identifying talent, the way they approach the market, they're upper echelon. They're top tier. So just to get back on the Retegui, though, I mean, he went for like what, low 20s last year from Genoa to Atalanta.
25, I believe. Yeah.
So like, I'd like to think that because of the year he just had, because it would be a domestic sale.
He is 26.
That's all going to be a lot of money, man. Honestly, it's going to be a lot of money.
Well, hey, I know what you're saying.
I'm not saying that.
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying,
can I really expect Milan to spend 50 million on a striker?
Well, I know. Well, that's the whole thing. That's why I said if you believe Luca, if you believe these reports, and I think it is largely predicated on exits. Realistically, if Milan were to sell those players that I had mentioned, and they get, I'm not saying they're getting,
doesn't need to sell. They're in the Champions League too.
But there is a release clause. I'm saying right now, if they sell those players, listen.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying
I'm not saying I see it. I'm not saying I see it. I'm saying the report and what Luca is saying, what Tade said, and the player that makes sense for it. It is Retegui. It is simply Retegui. If they do Retegui, if they're breaking their, and again, I don't give a shit about this club record stuff. They spent a record 40-something million in 2004. Fucking break it or don't. I don't give a shit because you're gonna have to eventually. We've seen Napoli double that with Osimhen. Let's go. Eventually, some point, this guy's proven how much already in Serie A. People are, and I'm not saying like I know you're saying this, but it's just for some people who doubt him. How could you doubt this guy anymore, Retegui? He's clearly a goal scorer. He went to Genoa. Genoa's shit. The guy goes in and produces immediately. Bless you. Genoa go immediately to produce. Then he goes to Atalanta. Dude, he should have had 30 goals this year. I think he was a really bad penalty taker. He should have had 30.
But he scored a lot of penalties.
I don't think he was that great of a record. Because I, funnily enough, had that looked up. Prior to that, I don't think
saying like a lot. He may have missed a lot, but he was the guy that
missed a couple this year.
Stats.
He only took. Sorry, in Serie A he took 5. Right? Yeah, he scored 5. He missed 2 in total.
So 5 penalties.
Correct.
Okay.
He missed 1 in Serie A. Guess who saved it?
Mignon?
No, hell no. He hasn't saved a penalty in years. Milinkovic-Savic. Who's like actually like the second best penalty stopper in the world, I think, behind Donnarumma, or they're right up next to each other. But again, yeah, I mean, listen, Retegui for me, I think he's worth spending the money on. But for me here, I think to wrap this episode up is that Milan's situation right now is getting Jashari over the line, Teo Hernandez out, and then focus on the other player sales. Otherwise, I don't think we could really go off with too much, dude, because I think it's just a little hot air right now because you know this. We think players like Colombo, Adli, Pobega, Benacer, Chukwueze, Okafor are all worth a fee, some money. But realistically, how we know it's breaking down and going, you're probably not going to get permanent deals for a good amount of them. So with that, they have to know for sure what their options are and what their budget is. And to your point too, like I keep thinking about it, they don't necessarily have a backup for Rafael. You know, so like who do they replace there? What are their priorities? I do think though, in my opinion, as of today, Matt, once they sell Teo, the 2 fullback positions are more important or most important than its striker. If you're keeping every center back right now, I think center back goes to 3rd in terms of like positional need, just because you haven't sold anybody and they only have 1 striker. So I find it interesting. I think players could develop in terms of like news. Mitrovic would be fascinating. He was a beast in the Prem, by the way, for some players or some people who didn't see. Mitrovic was awesome, but I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, any other final notes, mentions of players that you want to bring up before we kind of get into all that, or not get into all that before we wrap up?
I guess on the Giovanni Leone front, the young center back from Parma. I think Milan were quoted 25 million earlier in the market, or earlier in this sort of market frenzy, and it seems like they're kind of moving the goalpost, and I think they're trying to be playing hardball because I think they see that, all right, Inter, Milan, all these big Italian clubs want them, and they're kind of slapping a 40 million price tag on this player, which, I mean, fine, go for it. But I think that, a lot of times what happens is with that is if the guy suffers a big injury or he doesn't play that well, I think they're in a position next year where they can be in a bad spot on an asset that largely is unproven. Granted, talented from what we've seen, but I guess we'll wait and see. I think that, again, a lot of dominoes have to fall. You might see this Milan central defense have a lot of the same personnel because, again, we're going to reiterate that it's one competition. They might not want to make wholesale changes. Pavlovic looks like he's probably going to stay. There was made a concerted effort to get him out potentially last January.
I want to talk about him one day about the Allegri development, but go ahead.
And I think that the only central defenders that we've seen mentioned with potential exits was Matteo, which that connection to Como seems like that's fizzled out. He doesn't want to go there.
Leverkusen was the other one.
And Leverkusen and Tomori seems like he could be on the out. So again, I think that we have to kind of consistently harp on the fact that it is July 1st at the time of recording here. A lot of things kind of have to fall into place for Milan to have an understanding of where they can stretch their budget, what other areas they can address, and so on and so forth. And of course, anything with that we will share with you guys. We're trying to get out multiple episodes per week. I think we're doing really well with that and giving you guys the updated transfer stuff. So we appreciate the support, and make sure you guys like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. And again, thank you.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, I fully expect left back to be the next center of focus once the Jashari deal gets over the line. Again, multiple reports, just to wrap that up, are saying Milan's latest offer is 32.5 million base with 5.5 million in bonuses, totaling to 38 million euro for the.
It's going to have to get to 40. We know it's going to be.
I don't necessarily think so. I think maybe the base would have to be increased, and then
I can definitely see it getting to 40, or Milan trying to insert some sort, or Brugge saying, we want a percentage of future resale. I could see that happening.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, which was what is likely. I don't think that fee-wise it's going to be much different, if at all. I think this is more than enough. The players pushing to leave. Either you accept or don't. We've seen this already happen with Brugge. They had to accept CDK for a little bit less than what they wanted. Did we meet at the number? Yeah, sure. But, that's haggling. I trust Tade in these negotiations. And again, which is very funny, that is being consistently reiterated in every report here, is that Jashari to literally quote Fabrizio Romano is the last part. He's like, a lot has been written about Borussia Dortmund and other teams. I can guarantee you that 100% that today Jashari's idea is very clear, very strong, and it is called AC Milan. That's all you need to know. I think there's too much leverage in Milan's corner with this. We'll see what happens. They're due, I guess, for a good transfer, for a high fee. Again, guys, we appreciate you so much. Cruising on the clips. We appreciate everybody supporting us there. Exceeding 1,000 followers on Twitter. We've been very happy, very proud of that one. So thank you for that. Try and boost us up to 300 followers on Instagram. I know we're a bunch of unks, so we're not great at Instagram, so we apologize. But TikTok's doing well. We're going there, and again, really appreciate that. Anything else that I might have missed? Or I think that's it, right?
No. I think that's pretty much it. As I mentioned, thanks everyone. And July 1st, we got some guys coming in, which is nice. So let's try to stay positive. Happy
4th of July to everybody in the States over here. Everyone else, enjoy your summer. Happy Canada Day to those Canadians watching as well. So, yeah, everyone enjoy the start of summer. Stay hydrated and all that kind of stuff. And again, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Take care.